All right, guys, like I said, I'm Matt, this is Jay, and we're going to talk about basic throwing mechanics as well as the different stages of the delivery. Jay is going to be our model here. First things first, okay? Everybody talks about pitching, but in order to pitch properly, you have to have the right throwing mechanics. So we're going to go over real quick just the checkpoints for proper catch. Talk about backspin a little bit and why it's important. So first things first, your head is always still. And the reason for your head being still is if your head's moving, you don't see the target, your body goes wherever your head goes, and your shoulders open up, arms drag. And again, Jay's going to demonstrate this here in a second. Just want to run through it all. You point the glove to the target, and again, whether you're a shortstop throwing to first base, whether you're an outfield throwing to the cut, whether you're a pitcher throwing to the catcher, the glove always goes where you're trying to throw. That's how you keep your shoulder closed. You see a lot of kids drop their gloves, and shoulder opens. Arm drags. Obviously, same thing, step to the target. Wherever the legs go, the upper body follows. Throwing arm up and the foot lands. I know Steve's going to talk about that a little later, but as soon as our front foot plants, that arm has got to be up because your body's going to rotate and go forward with or without the arm being up. So you got to make sure the arm's up and the front foot lands. And you see from a pitching standpoint, there's so many major league guys, there's not anybody that has the same pitching mechanics, but the timing is when that front foot plants, everybody's arms up in a good throwing position. Throwing hand follows through to the hip. That's basically you're pulling it down. A lot of kids finish across the shoulder to the rib. You're on the side of the ball at that point. You want to pull your hand down to the opposite hip, so righties finish to the left hip, lefties finish to the right hip. That's how you get on top of the ball, get behind it, release out the front. Chin and chest are always square to the target, no swinging shoulders again. If your chin and chest go forward, like I tell all the guys we train, if my chin and chest go to the mid, my hand's out in front, I'm on top of the ball. But as soon as your shoulders spin off, you're around the ball, you get side spin. So we're going to have Jay, again, demonstrate real quick just the basic mechanics of throwing. So Jay, if you're going to throw that camera straight ahead. Okay. So you're playing catch the camera. Here we go.
Well, first of all, chin, like Matt mentioned, straight to the target. You'll see a lot of kids, especially at the younger age groups, they always seem to tilt, right-handers-wise, tilt to the left. So what they do is they open up their arms like this, their heads are leaning, and then it's more fetch than catch. If you teach them where eyes are straight to the target, chin to the target, and step towards the target, obviously in this direction, you keep their chin straight as they're throwing the baseball and their head's level, which means that, like obviously when both eyes are level, you see it better, and you usually get a better result. Through personal instruction, the very first time you meet someone, it doesn't matter what level they are, typically high school, college, if they've never had someone to step in and say, hey, when you guys are playing catch, keep your chin to the target, you'll see a guy on the mound and he'll look like this. You can take a still shot, and typically they're leaning like this for a right-hander, and for a left-hander is obviously the opposite. So when we first start private instruction or little camps or for little guys, the first thing, besides learning how to hold the baseball in your hand, is to make sure that they step, eyes level, chin to the target, and like Matt said, a nice follow through over the opposite leg.
And Jay, talk real quick before we move to pitching. He's going to talk about backspin, what it is, and why it's important.
Right. Well, first thing we've got to talk about before we get to that is how to hold a baseball. This right here is probably one of the easiest things to do, but if it's not taught, if everyone comes to baseball, I think they know how to throw it. The seams on a baseball, for some in the room, I'll make it real kind of generic. If you look at the baseball, obviously a four-seam fastball. Four seams obviously mean that the four seams of a baseball travel through the air, spinning backwards, where you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. A two-seam would obviously be 1, 2, comes back around, 1, 2. So that's between the four-seam and two-seam. The four-seam fastball is thrown really for spotting the pitch up. It's make sure that you can throw it to a location with your fingers on the ball to the point where the backspin of the baseball is at equally pulled down on two fingers so you get an equal spin. If you're off just a little bit, the ball will run or slide one way or the other. To hold a baseball on the backspin, on the seam, to get the proper backspin, if you look at for right-handers, the horseshoe of a baseball will face away from it. The reason why is because if we hold our fingers up, we'll see one taller than the other. If you have the horseshoe facing away, you'll see the smaller side is coming down and the upside is tall. To get equal pressure on a baseball, to get four-seam, true four-seam spin, if your fingers are on top, you grip the seam where that both fingers exit that seam equal. If you flip the ball around, so for a right-hander, this would be wrong, you'll see that this finger will be over the seam so that when you pull down, you're not getting equal pressure on the baseball. That's probably the biggest mistake I found all the way up through, even through college. On the two seam, obviously it's right here. Both fingers on top of the seam, pulling down out front.
And position players, again, this applies to you, not just, I know it's a pitching program, but I've seen a lot of guys make the great play in the hole that's short or make a great catch, but all of a sudden they got to make a 100-foot throw or a 200-foot throw from the outfield, and that thing runs away on them because they're not holding the ball properly. So, okay, we're going to move into pitching, but you cannot pitch with the proper mechanics if you do not throw properly. And I know Jay and I, we're sticklers on it. People come to us for lessons, and we do an hour throwing. And they wonder why. They want to get right into throwing, but if you can't play catch properly, it's going to be very tough to pitch. So, stages of delivery, again, we're going to run through it, then Jay's going to go over it. You got your rock, your pivot, balance, power position, and follow through. What we're going to do is we're going to break each stage down, dissect it a little bit. So first is the rock. It's a side step or a small step behind the rubber. So if Jay's on the rubber right now, obviously him being a right-handed thrower, he's going to rock with his left. Lefties are going to rock with their right.
All right, so rocker pivot, one of the key points of the rocker pivot is to make sure that your body mass stays over top of the mound. You don't want to take that rocker pivot where your body steps off the mound, because if we're throwing towards home plate's in a straight line, we want to keep our bodies, our heads, and our eyes as ideally as in that straight line as long as we possibly can. If we take our heads and we slide off, that means that I have to come back to find that straight line again. So when we take that rocker pivot first step, you keep your body straight in line, let your leg do all the work.
So, and again, that's when I have the last point, keep your upper body as still quiet as possible. That's essentially what I'm saying. Less movement is better. Less is more with this. The biggest myth, and Jay, if you want to talk about this for a second, I hear people constantly say the farther back you rock, the harder you're going to throw. In my experiences from teaching, I've noticed it just makes it harder for guys to properly pivot and properly get the balance.
That's correct. Anything in sports, whatever sports you play, balance is one of the keys. And we all know that. If my rocker pivot takes me off that balance point, the balance point is going to be when I get to the next stage, which we'll get to, I have to fight my body each time, repetitionally, to find that same point before I go home. Pitching especially is all about repetition. It's repetition to get the same result, a positive result hopefully, by throwing strikes over and over again. If I change my mechanic each time I take a step, or each time I get to the balance point because I'm swinging my mechanic, then the result can change drastically from pitch to pitch. So if I take that step, my body stays here, whatever step that I took, as long as my body stayed here, it's the same mechanic over and over again.
Okay, so we go from the rock to the pivot. Again, that's righties. Your right foot is your pivot foot, lefties your left foot. You want to make sure, and I see this constantly, where guys, when they pivot, obviously we don't have a mound down here, so it's difficult to see, but I've noticed every time Jay pivots, his foot is perfectly squared. If there was imaginary rubber there, the foot has to be squared to the rubber. And the reason for that is if you're not squared to the rubber, you're not square with the target where you're trying to throw the ball.
That's correct. So first movement, then rocker, pivot. Foot square up to the mound right here. Like
so again, if his foot was offline and he went to balance, now all of a sudden he's coiled up and he's going to open up on his way home. And you're basically making it a lot more difficult to throw strikes. And the name of the game, like you said, is being consistent with our movements, consistent with what we do. So then we move to the balance position. That's where you lift the front knee. So again, right-handed throwers at your left knee, left-handed throwers at your right knee. You lift the knee straight up. You do not kick. You do not swing. You do not coil up. Again, guys in the major leagues do it, but they have such an understanding of the fundamentals that, you know, I see guys when they coil or they kick their foot, when they land, their line's a foot across their body, whereas when you see a guy like Felix Hernandez or Cueto, you know, when they coil up top, when they land, they're in a perfect direct line, so again, to the camera, whereas the guys that don't have that fundamental understanding, they're offline, and again, if you're not in line going to target, arm's going to drag, you're not going to be able to release out in front. And again, less is more. The less our upper body moves, the easier it is to get balance. making.
The mechanic is, the simpler we can keep it, the more chance you have to repeat it. So step was obviously 1, rocker pivot is 2, and balance point is 3. Now in the balance point, we always talk about this, is that swinging the front leg. You'll see this happen, well, usually, until someone has mechanical training, they always go like this. And they kick it up as high as they can. You cannot repeat the mechanic if you swing any body part. So if I'm really controlled my body, and I take my step, it's in control. I can do this probably 1,000 times and get probably a high majority being exactly the same. Rocker pivot, I can do that over and over and over again and get the same result. If I pick my leg up to the balance point, I can repeat that. At any point, I swing it up. At one time, it might be here, the next time it might be here. I'm a little tired later in the game, it could be here. It changes. And when the fluctuation in the mechanic, when it changes, it means that typically the result as well is going to change as well. So a true balance point is exactly that, balance.
And the other thing you notice, Jay, if you kick your foot out, watch how much his head and his upper body moves. So he's going to lose his balance, he's going to lose the target as well. And again, I always say if you don't have control of your lower half, you don't have control of your upper half. The reasons for lifting the leg and getting to balance. I ask kids all the time, parents, no clue. First and foremost, it's to gain control of your body. You have to establish control of your body to control where you throw the baseball. The second is to let your arms catch up. As that leg goes down, as that left leg goes down, that right arm swings up. And how many guys in here hear the term, you're rushing? How many times has a coach screamed, hey, you're rushing, slow it down? What that means is you're not getting to your balance point. So if you're pitching, you're rushing through your balance, your arm's not catching up, you have no control of your body, that's a recipe for disaster. We're not going to be consistent. We're most likely going to injure ourselves at some point down the road. So now from balance, this is where it gets tricky. Now we're at power. So what happens at power is when you separate, how many guys have heard stay back? I would imagine everybody in here has heard it at some point, whether it's a parent saying it, a player saying it to another player, a coach saying it. What that means, everybody says it's keeping your weight back, right? But how do you keep your weight back going forward down a hill as fast as you can? And people look at me like I have 10 heads because it's difficult. It sounds, well, how do you do it? So a lot of people think you jump forward to create your power. The problem with that is your arm drags behind. Staying back is simply keeping your upper body over your right leg if you're a right-handed thrower and over your left leg if you're a left-handed thrower. So Jay's going to demonstrate what we're talking about. Maybe a side angle would be better.
Okay. I'm going to play it that way. From the balance point, from here, what I want to do is I do a load position. So I'm cocking my hip because I'm going to lead with my hip, keep my body over my center mass as I'm driving towards the plate. Directionally, I want to be going in a straight line where my foot and my heel is in line with the catcher. You don't want to be striding over here because then I'll have to come across my body, and if I go in the opposite direction, I will open up my front side hip, arm opens up, and I'm throwing a lot of shoulder at that point compared to staying in line and throwing with my power downhill.
So, and the other side to that is, if you fall forward, your arm, your upper half, and your lower half are not going to work together. When you stay back, your lower half, basically your hips accelerate your arm, whereas when you fall forward, it's your shoulders accelerate, and you don't get a lot of power out of there. So again, there's a couple ways I look at it. Like Jay said, head over the back leg, or the upper body stays behind the front foot. Either way, it's going to put you in a good position. If you notice, and maybe Jay can elaborate on this a little bit more, but if you notice it's Zach Brinke on the left and Andy Pettit on the right, so they're staying back differently. Pettit's more of an elbow guy, Brinke's more of a glove guy, but if you notice, it's still getting loaded on their backside, and their hips are horizontal. The hips are not going up and down, and the reason you don't want to go up and down, again, your head moves too much, and your arm doesn't catch up with your body. So staying back, you want to try to keep your hips as horizontal as you can. So now you plant. So Jay, show them the actual landing position, where you should actually be when you land.
All right, I know it's tough to see because I'm not elevated, but when I land, I'm going towards home, I want to have my foot, it now becomes a landing and torque leg. So as I'm coming through on my mechanic, and when this leg hits, my weight is still back as I'm driving forward. When this foot plants, it now kind of almost locks a little bit, and now it's a steady base for me to throw against. And as I throw, I'm using this leg. If it was open, I don't have my hips are all the way open. If it's too far closed, I lock my hips out. If it's on a slight angle degree, I can then torque my hips to the point where they're in line with the catcher. It's a little bit of a feel for every pitcher that does this, but once you find that lock point, that's when your hip and your foot is locked out to the point where you can go over your front side.
Again, and the visual for that, again, hitters, how do you hit? You open your front foot? No, you're going to lose all your power. It's the same thing with pitching a baseball, throwing a baseball. So if you notice when he landed, his weight was back, his front side, the glove was still out, the glove was not down. A lot of guys, when they plant, that glove drops, and then that shoulder opens, and the arm drags. So, now the follow-through. So basically, you can't, everybody, I couldn't tell you how many times I hear a kid, you know, either a parent or a coach, follow through, but they're not getting balanced. So, no matter what you tell, you know, a player that you coach or your son or you tell another teammate, you cannot follow through if you don't get the balance, if you don't stay back, and you don't land in a good power position. So again, as Jay was saying, you push off the backside, you tuck the front side. Jay, talk a little bit, because I know Steve and I sometimes talk about this, and that's kind of the fun thing about pitching and throwing is you have so many people. Guy Mike Remlinger, good buddy of mine, played 16 years in the big leagues. He says the thing that drives you nuts about baseball is you have 10 guys that are doing it completely different, and all 10 are completely right. So there really is no one-size-fits-all, but the studies, you know, in the numbers are, I sometimes tell guys to tuck the front. Well, a lot of kids pull it, but Jay and Steve both talk a lot about bringing the glove back towards the chest. So do you want to go ahead and demonstrate that?
On the front side glove, for me, my body is going to eventually meet my glove. Any pull action here does not cause a reaction of this arm doing anything different than what it wants to do in the first place. So the harder I pull this arm does not move. So a lot of times when guys pull, they will pull away, and that causes the problem of opening up the chest too soon, losing all your power and putting straight on your elbow and your shoulder. Depends on what angle your elbow and shoulder are at. So for me, once I put my glove out, I use it as for two items, direction and deception. The first one, obviously, if I have my glove open, or here, some guys do this, it's deception to the hitter because he's looking for this little box right here where this ball's going to come out of. And then direction for me, like the scope of a gun, it's pointing right towards home plate. That's where I'm going to throw it. And sometimes people say erase the hitter. I'm not a big fan of that because I think that if people do that, they go too far and open up the front shoulder. So what I like is, as you're coming towards home, you turn your glove and your body will eventually meet your glove. Some guys can pull back and be very controlled at a higher level, but for the young ones, I like it up. I like the body going to the glove and that they meet each other without this coming forward, the body meets the glove.
Okay, and then on the follow through, you see a lot of guys, well, I mean, we're talking 8 years old to high school to college to the professional ranks, guys' shoulders will spin off. And again, this goes back to driving the chin, driving the chest, a good checkpoint for a lot of guys I work with. I talk about just take your chin to the mitt, but the lower half is side to side. Jim Palmer, I don't know if you guys hear it, but he probably says it once a week when he does the broadcast. I think it's great. Says the lower half is like a merry-go-round and the upper half is like a Ferris wheel. Your lower half is rotating. Your shoulders obviously being attached to the hips in some way. They want to rotate too. So you have to train yourself as a pitcher to pull down and accelerate forward as opposed to spinning off sideways. Because as soon as your shoulders spin, as soon as your upper body goes right and left, your arm drags, you can't get on top of the ball, the elbow and shoulder are going to get it eventually.
A lot of times you'll see with guys, what they do is, like Matt was saying, is that they're rotating this way to throw a baseball. And then they usually fall over to whatever side they're throwing from. To me, and I think when the studies go, is that if you can throw the baseball and keep your head to the target, chin to the target, and you throw down through the baseball, being nice and balanced on your front side, the velocity gets better, the results get better. The control gets better. So this motion, not as good as coming down through the baseball.
Yeah. Your power source is back to forward, top to bottom. You hear people say north to south. Well, that's what they mean, top to bottom, north to south, pulling down. All right, so now we're going to talk real quick about off-speed secondary pitches. The most important thing is your mechanics do not change. If you throw 100 pitches, 60 fastballs, 30 changeups, and 10 curveballs, your arm speed, your body speed, everything stays the same. So again, if you have an 80-mile-an-hour fastball and you throw 80 on the first pitch and then you throw a changeup, your arm speed on that changeup is still 80 miles an hour. The grip, the hill, the seams are what create either the change of speeds or the movement. The hand must be on top of the ball. Again, guys, Jay, talk a little bit about the downhill effect. Obviously, we're not on a hill, but talk a little bit about why being on top is the only way these secondary pitches work.
Right. Well, I mean, not to get overly complicated, is that if you have a guy that say he's my height, I'm close to 6'5". If I'm throwing on a downward plane like this, going like this, the hitter not only has to see inside out which way the ball is going, whether it's running or diving, he also has to take this angle into consideration as well, going up and down. If I'm 6'5", but I throw from right here, it's very similar to that if I was throwing from one knee at this point. Now the hitter does not have to deal so much with the angle of the baseball, he's only going inside and out. So for pitching standpoint, the better angle you can create in this motion, you're now having the hitter have to fight two different elements. In, out, as well as the angle going pretty much up and down, almost like a backside of a pyramid, so to speak. So if I was a hitter and I had to worry about a guy throwing from 3/4 arm slot, in and out, I have a better chance to barrel the ball. If I have a guy that's, say, sometimes you'll see on the pro side, guys are 6'7", they're now signing guys that are 6'8" in the big leagues. Kansas City has the guy pitched the World Series, Young. I think he's 6'7", 6'8". He doesn't throw that hard. He only throws 89, not 90 miles an hour in the big leagues. It's still pretty hard, but it's not hard like 97, 98 would be. But his deception from throwing from up in this angle, going down, makes it look like it's over 100 miles an hour. And that's where the creation of that angle is so important. So for little guys to throw, if they throw like this, we want to get the arm angled up a little bit to have them throw on a downward plane.
And just, a quick note, again, it's just personal philosophy of mine, but you have no business throwing a curveball or a slider until you master the fastball, the two-seam, the four-seam, and the changeup. And until you can throw those three pitches, don't even bother trying to throw a curveball.
Let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest pet peeves I see is when I go to games and I see a little guy out there and he's throwing curveball, curveball, curveball. They're not even close, but guys are swinging and everybody's happy. The results are good. Getting a lot of outs. Well, to me, if you look at a fastball, and I always ask my guys that I'm working with as teams, how many pitches can a fastball be? Well, it could be low and away, it could be low and in, up and away, up and in, it could be right down the middle. There are many variations of a fastball. So to me, before a guy's throwing this every pitch, he has to demonstrate he can control the fastball in, out, up, and down. When a guy can throw his fastball in 5, 6 locations consistently, then at that point, depending on the age obviously and development, he then is ready to throw a breaking ball. If he can't throw a fastball in this area right here with some consistency, on some control, this pitch right here is not the next pitch. It's work on this pitch. In the big leagues, probably 60–70% of starters throw fastballs all day long. You go to a Little League game, sometimes it's flipped. You'll see 70% curveballs and just a couple fastballs. And the fastballs they do throw, they're not even close. So teaching, obviously, we'd like to see fastballs held correctly, mechanics a little more refined and simplified for the younger guys, and consistency with the fastball, hitting locations, hitting spots.
And guys, to throw your off-speed pitches, you have to practice throwing them. Play catch with them, obviously get loose, but a two-seam and a changeup are going to loosen up your arm the same way as a four-seam, but you have to ultimately command your fastball. There's sometimes a kid will come in, we'll have an hour workout, 15 minutes in, he's spot on with his fastball, we start throwing changeups and curveballs. Next week he comes in, we're 3 buckets in, and he's not throwing a curveball or a changeup yet because he hasn't established his fastball. So everything works off the fastball, whether you're hitting or pitching, everything works off the fastball. Now we're going to move on to a couple of drills, and then we'll answer a few questions, and then Jay's got to get out of here. First drill is balance. I say hold it for 1 second only, and the reason I say that is I've heard some people hold it for 5 or 6 seconds. All of a sudden, you're holding it for 5 or 6 seconds, you start teeter-tottering, it becomes counterproductive. Jay, go ahead and show them what the balance drill is.
A great balance drill, obviously, the I'm talking about is holding the leg up, balance point, not leaning back, not foot out, but a true hanging from the knee down, balance. One drill that I like to do, and I've done pretty much my career, is called a tap drill, where especially for some younger guys, go to a balance point, tap behind, bring it back up, and all you're doing is using the mechanism of coming up with your knee. I'm not swinging it up, my upper body stays still, and I just tap. I might do 10 to 15 both ways. It gives my muscle a chance to understand that I'm picking it up, not swinging it up, and it also gives me a chance to really perfect this movement.
But guys, if you notice when his front leg goes down, that is what the hanging balance drill is. I just have a different name for it. But if you notice, Jay, do that one more time. When his front leg goes down, his upper body's not on its way forward. His upper body's just, it's stuck. It ain't going anywhere. So if your upper body goes forward as that front leg comes down, that to me, see, balance is a drill I do with the younger guys when they don't establish it. But the older guys, what happens is you can still get balance and fall forward. By doing that drill right there, you 100% to do it correctly. You have to stay back. Power position, again, you just work off your stride. Jay, go ahead and show them what the power position is. And again, it gets you comfortable with that weight transfer back to forward and that direction, releasing out in front. And you just, from right there, you just push and follow through like we talked about. Now, I personally think the best drill is long toss. You hear some people say don't do it. Some people say only do it to this distance. Everybody has, there's guys that played the big leagues, won 300 games that long tossed 350 feet on the line. There's guys that played the big leagues, won 300 games, and didn't go past 200 feet. So everybody is different. Everybody reacts differently to the same things. Jay, go ahead and talk real quick about long toss. One thing before he says it, never sacrifice distance for mechanics. You're better off throwing it 150 feet with the right mechanics than you are throwing 200 feet trying to muscle up.
Long toss for me varies from position to position. There's a difference between a pitcher long toss and an outfielder's long toss. A pitcher's long toss for me is developing arm speed. It's also keeping the mechanic to a where that you're not varying too much to get distance when you throw the baseball. To me, throwing as far as long toss, you see us all the time. Guys go like this and they throw as far as they can. I don't see any benefit of that as far as the pitcher's concerned, because the pitcher really, we're learning to keep our head still, keeping our eyes level. And I think if you keep your head and eyes level when you play long toss, you'll get more result in a positive manner compared to looking as far as out as you can and saying, I'm going to throw the ball, into the next baseball field.
And guys, there is no correlation between how far you throw a baseball and how fast you pitch a baseball.
That's correct.
So just because you throw it 300 feet, I know kids that throw it 300 feet and it's nothing but gravity work, and they throw 75 miles an hour. So, and I know guys that throw it 200 feet on the line and throw 84. So there's no correlation between how far you throw and how fast you pitch.
So just to recap real quick, pitcher's long toss would be keeping the mechanic more stable, more balanced, more in control. As an outfielder, you're working more on your footwork, your strides, your steps to get the same result, hopefully, throwing a guy out at home. So pitchers, a little bit different. It's not as active on the footwork, but more on the upper body, more on the legs. And outfielders, more in the lower half, get themselves in position to make the best hard throw that they can make.
Okay, and the last thing, and then Jay's got to get out of here, and I'll be around at the end to answer some questions about mechanics if you have any, but no amount of instruction or coaching is ever going to supplement the pitcher, no amount of coaching or instruction will supplement the pitcher getting reps on their own and experiencing games. You can be the best coach in the world. If they're not working on their own and they're not going out and getting game experience, you're never going to mature and you're never going to get better as a pitcher. So.
And that's absolutely true. Even I played, for some of you guys don't know me, I played in the big leagues close to 12 years, had a pretty long career. And I can just tell you that what you guys probably saw for early batting practice was 1/50th what really we did per day. When we show up at the field for a 7 o'clock game, most of us were there at the field probably no later than 2:15. We did our weight room stuff, we did our balance work, we did our trainer stuff, we did our stretching routines. There was a full action-packed day before the lights turned on at 7 o'clock. And realistically, that's part of sometimes the game that is hard to teach because of scheduling. Sometimes kids show up at a field and all of a sudden within 10 minutes, they're already on the field playing. Very little preparation goes into the at-home training. When we give product instruction, like for myself, I see a guy for half hour a week at best. Well, it's what he does from that instruction through the rest of the week until I get a chance to see him again is really what makes the difference. So we work on balance drills, and I give them balance drills to do, or hand on the baseball drills. If they work on those reps at home, let's say 15, 20 minutes per day at home, you add the time that they're actually doing the activity That's what a normal coach would have at a higher level, maybe at the college level. They spend more time with the guys. High school, they're restricted as well. But the youth part of it, there's very little instruction because there's not a whole lot of practices nowadays. It's a lot of games, some travel teams. Sometimes travel doesn't take batting practice sometimes. They're out there and they're playing as quickly as possible. So if there's one key piece of advice I would say, once you have a good instructor that has instructed whatever the drill or the part of the mechanic that needs to be addressed, have them work on it. Find time through the course of the day. We do some charts, some graphs, and just say, I worked on it for 10 minutes today, and have your son or daughter sign off on it. Say, I put the time in today, and then they do it for 7 to 12 days, and all of a sudden, after about a week to 10 days, that part of the mechanic usually comes around to be where it's somewhat polished at that point. It's very hard to spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, one time a week, and expect to have results to follow. It's tough.
All right. We're apparently out of time, so Jay, appreciate you coming out.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions for?
Did you ever take the wind-up away from a young kid and just work with them from the stretch? How do you guys feel about that? To be able to repeat things quicker?
Well, taking the wind-up out, you're only taking 2 steps out. Taking the step, the rocker pivot, because from that point, from the wind-up and from the stretch, you're almost at the same point, the balance point moving forward. I don't know too many issues from the step and the rocker pivot to get to the balance point. If you simplify it for them, it's really a very easy part of the mechanic. The hard part is when they swing into the balance point. And typically, what you take out is, from the stretch, you take out that swing, because they're going from here to the balance point compared to the full wind-up, when they have that just 2 extra movements that you allow them to potentially swing to the balance point. So if you can address it, I think you can solve it pretty quickly and not have to take the full wind-up out. But if it is an issue and they're having a problem with their body swinging, then yes, you can take it out, but you have to work on that. I don't like guys that just do one thing. Depends on what level it is too. Now, at the higher levels, of course, if he's a bullpen guy, college or the pros, you can take it out. But younger, they should keep the same full, and the stretch should be almost, perfected equally.
So hey guys, we got to get the doctors in. It's their time. That's Jay Witasick. Jay, appreciate you coming out, helping out. I'm gonna stick around for a while. So.